Da, 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 da. Dun, da-dun, da-dun, da-da-dun. Zoom. Hello there, everybody. Welcome to our review of episode 10 of season 2 of Strange New Worlds. The episode is titled Hegemony. It's the season finale. And here I am, one last time, forever, for the rest of our lives, with my best friend, Jason Harding. Hi,
That got
Jason.
dark. Which one of us is gonna die? Jesus.
We'll find out next season.
No, we won't.
Oh,
No, we won't.
oh.
Doom is
Anyway,
coming for us.
no one's coming to help us. So yeah, let's talk about what it should be a pretty quick plot summary, actually, because it's not a super plot heavy episode.
No, not really.
So Captain Battelle, Captain Pike's girlfriend, her ship is dropping off supplies and stuff at a colony.
At a turn of the century village planet.
A colony that has been founded in a studio backlot. And Nurse Chapel is there because she is hitching a ride on the Cayuga, Captain Battelle's ship, on her way to her internship that she got last week. And wouldn't you know it, while they're there on the planet handing out vaccinations, here come the Gorn.
We're just there to rompy stompy and break up the party.
Yeah. And Captain Pike on the Enterprise gets a distress call saying, "Hey, Gorn, help, come help." so the Enterprise flies to this planet where the colony is, and right before they're about to dive into the rescue, they get a message from the Gorn that informs them that the Gorn have declared a border, a line of demarcation between the planet and the planet's moon. And the Enterprise is right beside the moon, and the planet's right there, but they're not allowed. And Starfleet contacts him and says, "Don't cross the line. Whatever you do, we don't want to start a war with the Gorn. Just, let them have this." So Captain Pike's like, "Well, great. Now we're right on the line that we're not supposed to cross, but on the other side of the line is where all the people are that we came to rescue." Oh, and the Cayuga has been destroyed. Like the debris from it is just sort of floating around. And they're like, "Well, what are we going to do?" So then they come up with this crazy plan where they're going to disguise a shuttlecraft to make it look like debris, and they'll float it through the debris of the Cayuga and then kind of sneak down to the planet. So that's what they do. And they get there and they find they find some baby Gorn running around, just looking for something to eat. And
they're acting weird.
They're acting weird. Yeah. Well, because La'an comes with them because she's the Gorn expert, because she's survived the Gorn before. And she says, "Oh, it's weird that the Gorn are," because usually the young Gorn would be fighting each other to establish dominance. And this time around, it's like they're working together. And that's weird.
That is weird.
But they find a bunch of the survivors from the colony hiding in Luke's diner.
Yes.
Oh, and also they run into another familiar face.
Who could that be?
From the original series. They're really they're really leaning into the "let's get the band together" vibe this season. They run into Scotty.
Decided there's only two more.
Yeah, because they run into Scotty. Scotty's there.
More. There's 3 more people they haven't run into yet.
Well, yeah. Well, let me see. They haven't run into Sulu. That's true. McCoy. Yeah, they haven't. So Sulu, Chekhov, and McCoy are the only 3 major characters from original series that we haven't seen pop up.
And I don't think they can run into Chekhov because he'd be too young.
Chekhov, yeah.
Chekhov is still in high school.
Yeah, that's true. I think if we compare this Scotty to Scotty as we see him in the original series, I think this Scotty's he seems a little young in this.
He's a little young.
Because it feels like Scotty, as we meet him in this, seems like maybe he's about the same age or maybe even a little younger than Kirk. And it always seemed like Scotty was older than Kirk.
Yeah, in
the old version. I mean, again, this isn't a criticism. I'm not saying that I don't like the show because of this. I'm just, it's but really the big difference between classic Scotty and this Scotty is that this Scotty seems plausibly Scottish.
Well, I think he is. I don't know.
I think they might have actually hired a Scottish actor.
I don't know. I don't know who the actor is. So.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen him in anything. But anyway, so Scotty's there, and he figured out a way to disguise his shuttlecraft because his shuttlecraft crashed. But he found a way to sneak past the Gorn by disguising his shuttlecraft with a thing that he made to make his shuttle read as like a Gorn ship on scanners. And Scotty's like, yeah, maybe and Pike's like, I think what he said was,
Steve, racist much?
I know. Is
that your Scottish gear? But
yeah, it's horrible. I'm a horrible person. But anyway, Scotty says, Pike actually comes up with the idea. He says, I'm going to sneak out and find Scotty's crashed ship, and I'm going to get that device that he made that disguised his ship, and I'm going to put it on our shuttlecraft, and we can get people out of here. And Captain Battelle is like, but you won't be able to get everybody out. We can't fit all of the survivors on your shuttle. And Pike's like, shut up, I want to save people. So Pike and Battelle and Scotty sneak out, and they find Scotty's crashed ship. And as they're getting his, device that he made ready to, trying to pry it off to take it with them, a little baby Gorn shows up, and the little baby Gorn is like, I'm going to eat you. And then Captain Battelle steps in front of him, and the baby Gorn like kind of looks at her and does like a scary face. And then he runs away. And Pike's like, what's the deal with that? And she says, nothing. And he's like, no, seriously, what's wrong? And she's like, nothing. And he says, okay.
And we're like, we know exactly what's going on.
You guessed it right away. And as soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, that's obviously what it is. But anyway, so before we get to that, meanwhile, back in space, the Gorn are sending out a signal that blocks the transporter, so they can't just beam everybody up onto the Enterprise. So Pelia and Uhura come up with their own crazy idea where they're like, hey, let's take the saucer section of the destroyed Cayuga, which is still floating out there in that wreckage field, and let's attach some rockets to it. So it looks like it's just having an orbital decay and falling to the planet naturally. So it won't raise suspicions from the Gorn, and they won't think that that we crossed the line. But we can calculate it so that when it crashes in the exact spot that we need it to, and it'll crash into like a Gorn facility that they have established down on the planet that is generating this scattering field. And then once that's down, then we can turn on the transporters and beam everybody up, right? So they're like, okay, let's do that. And Spock says, I am the only person who can do this. And nobody asks why, and it's never explained why, but Spock is the only person who can do this. So Spock puts on a spacesuit and grabs some rockets and does a spacewalk over to the Cayugas.
Because he's the only one that can do it.
Because he's the only one who can do it for some reason. And while he's attaching rockets to the outside of the saucer section to get it ready to do the crash thing, we find out that Nurse Chapel is still alive on the ship in a pocket where there's still some oxygen. And she sees Spock float by a window, and she's like, oh, hey, there's my ex-boyfriend. I got to get him so he can get me out of here. And she puts on a spacesuit, and she's like running around to catch Spock on the other side when, there's a Gorn on the ship, and the Gorn is trying to access something on the computer. And the Gorn has a Gorn spacesuit, which we've never seen before. He's got a big old Gorn tail and a Gorn spacesuit. And so Spock is coming in from one side and Chapel's coming in from the other side, and they have a space fight with the Gorn. And eventually the Gorn Spock cracks the Gorn's helmet, and he runs out of oxygen, and he dies, and he floats away. And then they manage to get the last rocket in place, and the saucer section goes down and crashes and turns off the Gorn scattering field or whatever. And they beam up everybody onto the Enterprise that they can detect. And Pike gets to the bridge, and then a bunch more Gorn ships show up, and the Gorn ships are like, we're gonna kill you. And Pike says, okay, beam up everybody else. Beam up, find all the people that are still in Luke's diner and beam them up. And Spock says, there's nobody left. The Gorn just beamed everybody up. The Gorn got him. And also, what was going on with Captain Battelle is she cheated on Captain Pike with a Gorn. And now she's going to have Gorn babies, which
on
is
purpose.
Wait, oh yes, she fell in love with a Gorn.
That's what
and they're starting a family.
I didn't know how to tell you.
And that's not going to go good for her. But they take her to sickbay, and Captain Pike says to Nurse Chapel, he's like, "Hey, listen, if at all possible, could you please prevent my girlfriend from being torn apart by the Gorn babies inside her?" And Chapel's like, "Okay, I'll see what I can do." And
but
then
the Gorn now have Leon. And who else?
They have La'an, they have Mbenga, they have Ortegas, and all the nobodies down, from all the nobodies down on the planet.
On the planet, yeah.
So most of the crew has been captured by the Gorn. Scotty and Pelia are on their way to engineering to put Scotty's device to work so that the Enterprise can be not detectable to the Gorn ships and get away. Captain Patel is about to give birth in a very gory way to a bunch of Gorn babies, and Starfleet
they freeze her. Remember
that's right. Yeah, they put her in stasis or something. And Captain Pike has just got a message from Starfleet saying, "Hey, don't fight the Gorn."
And there's 15,000 ships showing up.
Yeah. So Captain Pike has reached a moment of decision. What does he do? Does he follow Starfleet's orders and disengage and abandon most of his crew and all of the survivors of the colony to the Gorn? Or does he break the rules and defy the orders and try to rescue his people from the Gorn, but in doing so, perhaps start an interplanetary war? We'll find out at some point in the future, because it's to be continued.
Number of times. Yeah. Now, if things were normal in Hollywood, we could expect to get this show back a year from now. When did this start? Next year, May?
Yeah. They've been doing a season a year, so we would expect, next
whatever.
Year, about a year from now. Yeah.
But where now things are not normal in Hollywood, are they?
No, we have a writer's strike and an actor's strike.
And an actor's strike. And pretty soon there's going to be a whole bunch of other people's strikes. Yeah. So who knows? We'll see the conclusion of this in 2025, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And that's it. What'd you think? I liked it. What about you?
I mostly liked it. Yeah, and honestly, the parts of it that I didn't like were mostly down to just it just didn't seem super ambitious. You know what I mean? It's just the times when I have loved this show the best so far have been when it just absolutely swings for the fences.
Sure.
And it doesn't always hit it, because it swung for the fences with the musical episode, and I liked that, but I didn't think it was like a classic or anything. But that was a big swing, right?
Sure.
The cartoon crossover was a big swing, right?
Yeah.
And not just conceptually, but last year, the Gorn episode in the middle, the Memento Mori, where it's the chase with the ships and the planet and stuff that was a big swing.
No, I wouldn't say that was a big swing. I think that was just a solid, well-told story. That's not a big swing. That is a well-constructed hour of television.
Not a big swing conceptually, but in terms of the emotional beats and the tension This episode was more like the second to last episode of last season, where they did the horror movie episode. And it was well done. It was very well done.
Sure.
But it just feels like, okay, we've kind of seen this before, and they did a good job again, and they introduced some interesting, the hooks that they drop at the end for the to be continued, I think are very solid. Because I am interested to see what's going to happen with Captain Patel, if she's going to survive or not. I am interested to see how they're going to rescue the crew, because we can always there are a couple of characters in there, like we mentioned. There was a moment there where we both kind of thought,
they're going to kill Ortegas.
Are they going to kill Ortegas? Yeah. Because Pike, there's a moment when Ortegas is finally allowed to go on an away mission. That's been kind of a thread throughout the season, that she wants to go on away missions and she never gets to go. She finally gets to go on an away mission, and there's a moment when she's piloting the shuttle down to the planet, and to make sure that they don't trigger the Gorn's radar while they're flying down, she says, "Okay, I'm going to wait until we get super low before I pull up, so the Gorn won't detect us and they'll think we're just debris falling." And she waits until they get gets so close to the ground that even, Captain Pike is getting nervous, and he's like, oh shit, are we gonna crash or what? And she, and of course she, pulls off the maneuver perfectly, and they're flying away. And Pike like does this thing where he turns to her and says, you were born to do this, Erica, which is like the kind of thing you say to a character who's gonna die.
Exactly.
And so we were both like, oh shit, are they going to kill Ortegas? So and Ortegas is in the group that the Gorn beamed up. So, there's that. There's like, oh, are they going to kill Ortegas? Holy shit. Or so, and also, even if that wasn't in play, there's just the factor of, I wonder how they're going to rescue them. Like, they've put the characters into a seemingly impossible position. And how are they going to get out of it? So I'm not a huge fan of cliffhangers like this, especially at the end of a season. I would prefer they just wrap up a story and then maybe leave a few dangling threads to pick up next time, instead of just stopping right at the edge and going, wait, see you next time.
There's a part of me that's really was kind of like, I was hoping, when it came to streaming, a lot of them knew, hey, we got to give you an ending because we may not be back for another year. Right. The cliffhanger worked great on broadcast television because
you had a 3-month
summer,
wait.
You had a 3-month wait, and it was only 3 months. You only had to wait 3 months to find out what was going to happen. When Locutus struts up and Riker says fire, you only had to wait 3 months to find out.
It's going to be a long summer, but then you're going to find out what happened. Yeah.
And it's going to be summer. Hopefully there are other things to preoccupy you than watching television.
You're not going to be obsessing over the cliffhanger to Star Trek all summer.
Right. But in this case, to have it be continued, and I know that this isn't the TV show's fault, but it is a little frustrating, even on a general level, to go, okay, so now I have to wait a year to see this conclude. Okay.
Right, because of circumstances.
But now I might have to wait 2 years for this to conclude, or however long the strike is going to be, or and it's kind of like, all right, that's mildly annoying, because I'm already hitting this point where I'm forgetting when things come back on streaming until someone says, oh yeah, season whatchamacallit's back on. I keep thinking that Invincible, the second season, is up. And I don't know if it is, but I haven't found it.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either. How long have we been waiting for it now? I don't know.
It's been close to 2 years, hasn't it?
I'm gonna forget if it does. Okay, I'm gonna forget that it comes up, and that doesn't bother me terribly. But in this case, there are only a couple of things that really bothered me with the episode. Number one, how many of our characters on the show have plot armor?
Now that we've got Scotty running around, like a bunch.
Pike, I would argue Pike has plot armor.
Oh, yes.
Vega has plot armor.
Yes.
Did either one of us feel even the slightest bit scared for Chapel or Spock when they were over on the wreckage of that ship?
I will tell you what I felt. I didn't, and we've talked about this before. We talked about this with a previous episode when you brought up the number of characters that have plot armor.
Yeah.
Yes, we know that Spock and Nurse Chapel are going to be okay. We know that they're going to live because this is set in the same universe as the original series, and they all are on the original series. So, and as we talked about before, the producers of this show have not shown a willingness to just completely throw, the established canon out the window. They're going to stick to, they're going to try to keep the show consistent for the most part with what happens in classic Trek. So, that Spock and Chapel are going to make it. But because I'm invested in the characters, because I care about Spock, and specifically, and I care about Spock in this show, not just like the idea of Spock, because I've seen him in other stuff and liked him, but this particular depiction of Spock, when he was worried about Nurse Chapel, and they had that scene of him on the bridge with number one, where he was, you could tell that he was he was getting to the point where he was starting to accept that she was probably dead, because she was on the ship when the Gorn attacked, even though we know she's still alive somewhere, because we know more than Spock knows. I felt for the character in that moment, like the plot armor didn't really affect me, didn't keep me from sympathizing with Spock in that moment, So yeah, I mean, I didn't worry about them. I knew the Gorn wasn't going to kill them, but I still am able to empathize and connect with the characters on an emotional level, because I care about them and because the show has done such a good job with them. Even if I know long term that there's nothing to worry about, they're going to be fine.
But the whole time where everyone's thinking that Chapel's dead, and I'm like, no, she's not.
You're like, I know she's fine.
Not only do I know she's fine, I know she makes it all the way through this. She's fine.
She
unless, and I might actually respect them if they totally just break canon.
Oh, I would have no problem with that whatsoever.
He walks into one of the rooms on the, what was it, the Chattanooga? What was the name of the destroyed ship?
I thought it was the Cuyahoga, but apparently it's the Cuyahoga.
Okay. He comes through one of the rooms while setting up one of the rockets, and there's a Gorn half devoured. She's half devoured.
Just eating her face.
I'd like, that's bold. That's bold.
Yeah. And then they do a funeral scene where Spock says, the death of Nurse Chapel will never be forgotten by any of us here in the prime timeline, which is where we are living right now.
The only other thing is that I really didn't feel like they were setting us up for this last, how usually you put all your ducks in a row and then you have your last episode, and this is where everything kind of comes together, and it kind of did. There was stuff there.
Yeah.
It was good. I enjoyed it, but I also know, hey, we're not getting this anytime soon, guys. In point of fact, if the strike doesn't end, you can pretty much forget Steve having any shows like this next year.
That's true. If they're, because I ain't doing this for Lower Decks.
Is Lower Decks?
I hate
Lower
to
Decks
disappoint
is
you.
still coming out.
Lower Decks has a new season coming out next month.
That's great.
And I'll probably watch it, but I ain't doing reviews for it.
But then after that, there's not going to be.
Yeah.
This is what remains of their already in the can. Lower Decks will come out, and that'll be it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the strikes affect the last season of Discovery. As far as I know, the last season of Discovery is done, and they're just waiting to release it, and they're releasing it next year. I mean, or at least it's done as far as like principal photography and stuff like that. Like all of the artists who are striking have done all the work they were going to do. So now it's just post-production and stuff that I don't think is currently is not affected by any of the current strikes. So I think next year the last season of Disco will still come out as scheduled. So? I haven't heard any announcement that they're delaying.
I hope so. I don't watch it particularly.
But then that will be it.
Like, if
the strikes aren't settled soon, that'll be it for a while. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just because it's not particularly my favorite, I hope that everyone who likes the show doesn't have to wait. Pardon me. Forever to get that final season. That would suck.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, I thought it was fine. I really enjoyed the fact that it was very obvious that the planet that they had landed on at the beginning was a backlot. I love.
Yes.
That is kind of like, are they paying homage to the old show by having a backlot set, or they just happen to build things that look exactly like turn of the century Earth?
I liked, and I said this while we were watching it. It's one of the first times in a Star Trek show. I'm sure there are exceptions to this, but like it's one of the first times I can remember in any Star Trek show where they visit a human colony and it seems like a place that people actually live.
Remember the first time that we saw Pike in Discovery, he beams down to a planet.
Well, that's true.
That was like kidnapped or something.
That was like time displaced from Earth in like the 20th century or something.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. But this, usually when they visit a colony on Star Trek, either they get there after something terrible has already happened and it's just like a ghost town, and you just get like a couple of buildings, that you see, or it's like in the episode of TNG where they're still like building a colony, and then the crystalline entity shows up and fucking wipes everybody out.
I was just going to bring that one up.
Yeah. And this one, it's like, oh, they have a little town and it looks like a town. It's not like a space town with like, like cargo containers just kind of set around.
It looks like a single street Backlot set.
It looks like Stars Hollow or Smallville or any number of other small towns in TV shows. And I really liked it. I thought it was neat. It's like, oh, it looks like a place people actually live. How about that? And the civilians are wearing normal looking civilian clothes, like normal people. You know, they're not wearing.
And when they
clothes.
see the gigantic Gorn spaceship, someone's ringing a bell outside of the.
There's a dude of the barber shop.
Like, binga.
You said the guy ringing the bell outside the barbershop can't possibly be the emergency alert system.
That cannot
here, can
be.
It?
How in the world did they get there? If that, I want to
they
settle
clearly
colony
have some technology.
Where we just say, fuck this technology stuff, dump it. Because we did. Remember the Bryn Lloydie. Remember the Bryn Lloydie?
Right.
Irish,
yes.
Irish, somehow
they
Irish people.
They were even more offensively Irish than my offensive Scottish accent I did earlier.
They were on Earth and they did, we're going to build a rocket ship and we're going to go out into the stars. And as soon as we land at a new place, we're destroying all the technology and we're going to throw ourselves 500 years in the past.
We're going to become 18th century farmers once again.
That's right.
That's right. We're going to drink whiskey and have sex with sheep.
I don't remember that being in.
Okay, that was on the cutting room floor. That was.
But I mean, if they just bothered to do a little lip service and said they wanted to go a little, because remember, these guys they're not part of the Federation.
That's right. Technically, it's a non-Federation colony. Yeah.
Technically, the Federation could, or at least they tried to do this. They said, you guys are on your fucking own. You didn't want to be part of the Federation. You went outside of Federation space.
Good luck.
Now you get to be baby Bjorns for the fucking Gorn.
Yeah.
baby Bjorns.
Baby Bjorns.
Whatever. It's not bothering me. I remember the episode where the one episode where the Gorn appeared in TOS, where we didn't know what they looked like and we didn't know what they wanted. I think we kind of knew that they were hostile, but now,
I will say
no one had seen them, but now we've seen them.
We don't know. We don't know like what the resolution to this is going to be, but I know a couple points. First of all, the Gorn that attacks Spock and Chapel in the spaceship kind of looked full grown to me. Like he was
that
pretty
looked
big.
Like a full grown Gorn with a tail that wasn't the original.
Yeah, and he had a spacesuit on, so I guess technically they didn't get a good look at him.
Maybe it's a mechanical tail, and they don't. Maybe. They want,
but
who knows?
He doesn't look anything other than the fact that he's like a reptile person.
He's a lizard guy.
Yeah. He's a lizard guy. He doesn't look anything like the guy Captain Kirk fought, which I am completely fine with. I don't give a shit.
I don't either.
They can make the Gorn look however they want, and it's still the same timeline because it's a fake show about fake people that they made up.
I just wanted him to talk into a little microphone.
Oh, I would have loved that.
And Chapel hid from him.
When they honestly, when they got the hail from the Gorn at the beginning, and it turned out it was just the map. I wanted there to be a voice. This is the captain of the Gorn vessel.
This is the Gorn captain.
Yeah, I would have, but they didn't do that. They're still playing him as being like mysterious, which is fine. I actually think the Gorn as villains have been used very effectively in this show so far. I think they are.
What I also kind of liked is at the very beginning, Pike was like, monsters are monsters. Sometimes monsters are just monsters. I was gonna bring that up. Yeah. Then later on in the episode, he's kind of like, well, if they're capable of being, because they're noticing that their behavior is a little bit different. Pike is speculating maybe we can communicate with them.
Right.
Maybe we don't know everything about them yet. Maybe we're going to be able to, do something. And for the most part, if you look at it from the timeline, after what happens with Kirk, the Gorn disappear like a fart in the wind. We never hear from them again. They don't. They're not present during TNG or any of the other stuff.
No, they're not mentioned at all. Or if they are mentioned, it's like one mention. They're like on a list of other aliens.
Yeah, exactly. And the Gorn. I know that the Gorn were in Enterprise, but Enterprise is a prequel.
Yeah.
So after what happens with the Gorn here we have what could be a fairly interesting species. They're supposed to be technologically equal to the Federation.
Yeah.
And it would be neat to have them come back or have a Gorn somebody, and I'm talking about in modern Trek,
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that they can look into later, because it's literally a species that now we have a whole bunch of Gorn content, but we don't have anything. They keep trying to go back to the Romulans. Fuck the Romulans. How about the Gorn?
I'm 100% on that with you. I've seen enough of the Romulans to last me another 50 years. And I have nothing against the Romulans. I think the Romulans are fine, but yeah, it's like, okay, we've gotten plenty of Romulan stuff. Like something else, please. And yeah, and the thing about the Gorn too is not so much their appearance, because like really honestly, it's only the saddest of the sad, like super hardcore nerds that would possibly give a shit if the Gorn look a little different than they look, because like most people, especially most grown-ups, know that like the Star Trek show from the 60s looked the way it looked because they didn't have any money, and it was a guy in a lizard suit, and that's why it looked that way. And we're making a show in 2023 and we have a lot of money, and if we're going to do space lizard people, we're going to make them look different. Deal with it. Like most people get that. But I know there were a few people who objected, or at least were troubled by the depiction of the Gorn in season 1 of Strange New Worlds as these like unstoppable faceless monsters. I thought that they worked really well like that as like horror movie threats, and they work well as that in this episode too. And I think just generally in the show so far, they've been used very effectively like that. And I wasn't bothered by the faceless monster thing, because we know, if we stick to established canon, like we think this show is doing, that's Captain Kirk's story. Captain Kirk's the one who realizes that
no, I won't kill him.
I know I won't kill him. So why would you tell that story in this show when that story takes place, 7, 8, 9 years down the line in, that famous TOS episode. So to me, it wasn't a contradiction. Like
I want Star Trek to come up with some other race. I just want them to come up with something new.
Oh, me too. God, me too.
That's all.
As much as I like this show, and I really, it's still by far my favorite of the new shows. And I have liked most of the new shows. But Strange New Worlds to me is still head and shoulders above the head of the class.
What has always struck me, I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, but I would really like, again, I love the show. If I were running the show, I would not have introduced Scotty. I would not have. I mean, again, this Scotty seems fine. Seems like a good Scotty. Good, and hopefully if they use him after this, it'll be good, just like they've done with Kirk this season, like having Kirk pop up every once in a while. They've done a good job with that. And as long as it's a good show, I really have nothing to complain about. But I would like to see characters we haven't seen before. I think this show is in a position where they have enough space between this and the old show before they catch up, that they have enough room to basically do whatever they want in terms of who's on the ship. So we don't need to see Scotty. We don't need to see Sulu. We don't need to have all these familiar faces running around. We can introduce new people and have them do things,
I think one of the Enterprise was when the franchise started to look backwards.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been stuck there. You had Enterprise came out, Voyager was over, DS9 was over, TNG was over. And now we had Enterprise, and Enterprise was a prequel.
Yeah.
Looking backwards, and they created a new alien species that I don't even remember what they're called, the time travel people, whatever they were. There were
the Suliban. The ones that what were their names? The ones that attacked that attacked Earth in season 3 when they turned it into 24 in space for a year.
Yeah. And
I forget their names, but yeah.
Eventually, that show started to become about the Klingons, and there's even a Gorn episode, or I think maybe 2 episodes.
A Gorn show, a Gorn, it was, a Gorn appears.
It started looking backwards and cannibalizing its own history for show plots. Then we didn't have it on TV for a little while, and then the first thing we got back in the movies was again looking backwards. It was a reboot of of the original series on the big screen. And then when they came back, they're like, oh no, now we're doing Discovery, and this takes place before Kirk and Spock, and okay, so now we're back in the past again.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, we're going to have a break-off show from that show, which was Strange New Worlds, and that's looking back again, right?
Yeah.
And technically you could say that Picard ended, and I liked the last season of Picard. I know you didn't like it, but it was, and I will readily admit, it was nothing but member berries and nostalgia. A lot of it.
Yeah.
And again, it's looking back. We don't have a show yet. Well, we did. Prodigy.
Yeah.
That has been canceled.
Well, there is a season. No, they did season. I mean, season 2 is coming at some point.
Is there a season 2?
Okay, there's a season 2 coming at some point somewhere. Yeah, it's not going to be on Paramount Plus, and we're not sure when it's coming out. But yeah, there will be a season 2 at some point somewhere. Yeah.
And some people would say, well, no, because Lower Decks is set. And I think, as far as the timeline is concerned, I think it's set 10 years after.
Yeah, it's like
TNG
post the last TNG. It's like, yeah, it's set a few years after Nemesis, I think, or several years after Nemesis, something like that. Yeah.
Like Picard, it is a lot of nostalgia, member berries, and stuff like that.
Even more so than the last season of Picard, if that's possible. I mean,
sure,
almost every episode of Lower Decks is a riff on some reference from old Trek. Yeah.
And I'm not saying anyone's wrong for liking those shows. I'm glad that people like the shows. It's keeping the franchise alive. Right. But I'm hoping that at some point someone can walk in and say, hi, I want to do a new Star Trek show. And here's the new Star Trek show. And it has nothing to do with the past. It's not set prior to, wherever. It does not concern any of the people of the Enterprise. It doesn't consider, the name of the ship isn't the Enterprise. In fact, we're going to have it in the Bible for the show that no one mentions ever anybody from any show or any other ship.
Yeah. All new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're willing to do it, because I think too much of the brand relies on remember this.
Yeah.
Remember this. Even this show, we both love Strange New Worlds.
Oh, it's both fantastic,
do.
but
there's still a lot of remember this. Hey,
absolutely.
Look at it's Scotty.
We were talking. We were talking while we were watching this episode that we both really enjoyed. You said how many of these characters have plot armor?
Yeah.
And there are, like, we don't really know what happens to number 1. I guess they could kill her off, I guess.
I don't include her because we don't know what happens to her.
And there's Pelia, who is a new character.
Sure.
There's Ortegas, who was introduced for this show, and we don't hear anything about her later on, so they can do whatever they want with her.
Let's have a moment of silence for
Hemmer. Yes, they did. They killed off Hemmer last year. But yeah, I mean, even Pike, like, we know what happens to Pike, and the show itself acknowledges that Pike has a fate that he can't escape. So we know Pike is going to at least make it to the end of the show, to the end of the series.
So hopefully what we will rely on those characters for is interesting shit, right? Yes. Interesting shit is going to happen to them. They're not going to die, but maybe, Pike's going to be bummed out because his girlfriend had to hatch some alien babies.
Right. Yeah.
Because she doesn't have plot armor. I've never heard of her.
That's true. Yeah, she doesn't have plot armor. Yeah.
And, maybe some people aren't going to make it back. Who knows? We'll find out 5 years from now, or however long it's going to be.
Maybe get the next season. Maybe it turns out the Dr. Mbenga on Kirk's Enterprise is this guy's brother.
Oh,
they can always do that. But
they replace everybody on the show with scabbing actors.
Oh my God. Scab trick.
Or they try to rush their 3D animation, CGI body doubles.
Oh God. And it's just a show full of, like, Peter Cushings from Rogue One. It's like these uncanny valley CGI people.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing but Peter Cushings. Or what's another one that they did? Or Luke Skywalker's from
Mandalorian,
from Mandalorian. That was actually That was Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But...
Oh, that's right. The good one was Book of Boba Fett. The weird looking one was Mandalorian. Then they improved it for when he popped up in Boba Fett the next year. But yeah, same thing. There's nothing. There's still something not quite right about that.
Yeah,
it's like I know that's not really him.
The voice doesn't sound the same.
I know it's not really him. Yeah. Just cast an actor, guys. Just cast an actor. But yeah, people have asked me. I don't know how many times people have, and I mean, it's, I'm not, taking a shot at the people who ask this question, because it's a perfectly valid question to ask from someone who talks about Star Trek as much as I do. But, sometimes I'll get a question from people who are like, if you could do a Star Trek show, like what era would you set your Star Trek show in? And my answer is always, it wouldn't matter, because my show wouldn't be about anything that's already happened. I mean, I would, my half joking answer is I would set it sometime during when the TOS movies took place, because I love the red uniforms. and I like those red uniforms, and I like the way the ships looked back then. So I would want to do like, what Strange New Worlds has done for Star Trek, the original series. I'd want to do that for my show and take that classic like TOS Star Trek 2 through Star Trek 6 look and update it to modern era and modern technology. And
why bother?
Just
use the ship from the movies.
Yeah,
I don't think very many people know this, but I think both of us agree that is our favorite Enterprise.
Oh, the Enterprise from the movies is my favorite Enterprise. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And mine too. And it's like, why not just take that? And
but my point is, like, the only reason that the era would make any difference to me would be little stuff like that. Like, oh, I like those uniforms. I like the way the sets looked back then. So I would want to borrow from that aesthetic and use that as the basis for the aesthetic of my show.
I hate those goofy uniforms. I
love those red uniforms. The red uniforms are my favorites. But
with the bell bottom tucked into your boot. Oh,
boy. I love those. I love them. Yeah. But other than that, it wouldn't make any difference where in the timeline it took place, because my show would be my show about my stuff. And it would be, it wouldn't be like, oh, have you ever wondered what happened after the Enterprise left planet? Like, no, I don't give a fuck. I'm not.
But I need to ask you a question, because you don't give a shit about canon. I know that.
Yes.
When does your idea of a show stop being Star Trek? What makes it Star Trek? Your idea for the show, what makes it Star Trek?
The fact that it takes place in the Star Trek fictional world, and it has Star Trek in the title, and
but let's say you're doing
when the ship goes fast, they call it warp drive, and their ray guns are called phasers. And every once in a while a Klingon will show up. No,
but I mean, in all honesty, Star Trek has a certain amount. I think that there are probably certain things that need to be in a Star Trek show in order for it to be called Star Trek. Whether it's set in that Star Trek universe, or if you are going to have a Starfleet ship, it needs to follow. There are certain rules that you have to have. There's certain names for things. There are certain,
other than using like the intellectual property, and like the ships look a certain way and things are called certain things, and when we meet established aliens, like, oh, there's Klingons, there's Vulcans, etc. Like, there's sort of like, it would have all of that stuff in it. But to me, what would be most important, and what would make a Star Trek show, and what would make it not feel like a Star Trek show if it didn't have these things, is it would need to have a diverse cast of actors. And it would need to have a progressive, unapologetic political voice that was not on the forefront in every single episode, because that's never been the case with Star Trek. Not every episode is political, but a lot of them are. And that is a very important part of the show. Like, if somebody did a Star Trek show that it was nothing but like a flat action adventure show, and there was no political messaging ever, and there was, that wouldn't feel like Star Trek to me. It needs to have it needs to have a social conscience. It needs to have a political side, and it needs to be progressive and take the side of the little guy and take the side of the oppressed. And, occasionally turn to the viewer and say, things are really messed up in our world and we need to do something about it, because that's something that Star Trek has always done. And, any show, and I mean, obviously Star Trek's not the only show that does that, but that's something that Star Trek has always done. And if it didn't do that, at least every once in a while, then it wouldn't. Then it would feel like, okay, the people making this don't really.
Star Trek is Star Trek. Okay, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on here. Let's take a look at our other favorite sci-fi shows or franchises. Babylon 5 is not Star Trek. It just isn't.
No.
Yes, there are characters, they have a morality, they have a certain point of view, but the overall philosophy of Babylon 5 is not the same as Star Trek. Star Trek has a very specific kind of storytelling and philosophy, and Babylon 5 doesn't have it. Farscape has a very different philosophy from the other two shows. They're telling very different stories in very different universes. And I think that's one of the reasons why, if someone comes along and they're too much like Star Trek, people will point at it and say, you're too much like Star Trek.
You're doing Star Trek, yeah.
You're doing Star Trek now. And it's like, okay, sorry. And I think that's one of the reasons why you don't have too many. Like, one of the things I never watched was the people that traveled through space through those things. It was based on a movie. I don't know. I can't remember. I never watched it. Yeah, they had portals and they walked through them in ancient Egypt.
Oh, Stargate. Stargate.
Thank you. Yeah. I never watched Star Trek. I never watched.
I watched I watched like the first episode of the TV show, and I thought, oh, this might be good, and then I never watched it again.
Yeah, that's kind of my experience too. I never watched it again, and I was a little angry because Stargate bumped Farscape, which I did enjoy. It bumped Farscape off the channel, and then we had to get special movies from for them to finish up whatever it is they're going to finish up. But I mean, the whole idea is that I think for all fans, regardless of their level of enjoyment, Star Trek has a feel to it. There's a feeling you get. There's something about watching Star Trek, regardless of whether it's Enterprise or Voyager or DS9, TNG, TOS. And I think the better of these shows is that Star Trek has a philosophy and feeling, and that's what's really bringing us back a lot of the times, is that whatever it is, whatever that feeling is, it resonates with us. And some people, it's just flat action adventure. They care about the characters. I think that's awesome. I like it when I care about the characters. I care about Pike. I really do. Yeah. Even though I know exactly what's going to happen to him, I really do like Pike a lot.
Well, but that's, that's good writing and good, acting on the part of Anson Mount as Pike. And
if anything I feel kind of is missing this season, we didn't get any message episodes that I can think of.
I guess not.
First season I can. Oh, hey, it's wrong to take a kid and put him in a fucking machine so that he that's wrong. That's a bad thing, right? That's
about time we got that message. Don't put kids in machines to run your floating cities.
Don't put kids in machines. There weren't any real message episodes, right?
Yeah.
This season, or at least none that resonated with me enough for me to remember them. If someone goes, oh yeah, well, what about this one? I'll go, oh yeah, that's fine. But I still remember the plots from season 1, because one of the nice things about season 1, it was so episodic.
Yeah.
It was like, here we go, boo, 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 and we're on a new planet. Isn't that neat? And they have a problem. We fixed it, or we tried to fix it, or we overcame a misunderstanding. Something happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This one, not so much. This year, not as much. We'd got a lot of character stuff, a lot of character resolution stuff, which is fine. I don't mind. But we didn't get a whole lot of message Star Trek. I mean, what was the message when La'an and other Kirk went back in time? That was character stuff. That's fine. Right?
Yeah. I would say
Una went on trial. That was character stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was another example of this show doing its version of a commonly used trope from the franchise. It's like, oh, we're going to do our courtroom episode, and that was that.
Yeah. I mean, some people might say Benga's episode where he
the
killed
war
that
episode.
Klingon. Yeah, that one. But I'm not, and maybe I need to watch it again. It's possible. I'm not certain what the message of that show is. If it's setting stuff up for that character in the next season that we get 19 years from now, for we don't know how long the strike's going to last. If it's setting him up for something, great. But the episode itself, I don't know what it was trying to tell me. It's okay to kill people if you think they're faking. I don't know.
It's okay to kill people if you think they're faking. The big difference for now that we've seen the entire season, the big difference between this season and the first season for me, the first season I thought was perfect. I thought every episode was great. A good episode. Yeah. The first episode, some episodes were better than others, but every episode was a hit for me. It was like, okay, this was good. This season, I'm not crazy about the first episode. I've liked pretty much every episode since then, but it got off on a little bit of a wrong foot for me with the first episode. But overall, very strong season. I'm really pleased with what we got. But this season, and again, I don't say this to like sound any warning bells or to be like, oh my God, but I'm just noticing, this season, there wasn't that fucking blow away, like franchise classic. There was no memento mori. There were some very good episodes. I really liked Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I really liked the wacky Spock episode this year when Spock, became human. Like I really liked that a lot.
Yeah.
I thought the Lower Decks crossover was way better than I thought it would be.
Sure.
But none of those are like all-time classic, put this up on the shelf. This is as good as anything that TOS or TNG or Deep Space Nine ever did, like Memento Mori was. But that's not necessarily
that's not an end all be all for a show. It's
right, like, because not every season, not every Deep Space Nine had a lot of classic episodes. It's not like every 10 episodes of Deep Space Nine you could count on there being at least one classic episode. I think the audience now knows
that for both of us, DS9 is our favorite
Star
Trek show, and both of us will readily admit not every single show of DS9 is good.
No, because Loxana Troy shows up like 3 times.
Oh, but I mean, other than
doing?
the what are you
doing? Why are you here? Your daughter doesn't work here. Go away.
It proves that she has a life outside of just being a baby mama. Jeez Louise.
Go bother people on ships that don't have shows about them.
They wanted Odo to have an age-appropriate love interest.
Well, then
Steve. Some people genuinely like the character of Loxana.
I know. Oh, I know, and I am baffled by that.
Just because you don't like her doesn't mean she. You know what? That first episode between her and Odo is genuinely a good episode. I don't think so. It's a good Odo episode, and it's a good Loxana Troy episode.
It's mawkish.
We're never going to agree about this.
It makes me dislike her character even more. It's like they did that episode with her in TNG's 7th season where they reveal that, she had like a child who died before or when Deanna was a baby or something. And it was like, oh, okay. So I guess I have to feel sorry for her now. And I didn't because I hate her. Even more than that, though, they did that episode with her and
oh, don't bring up the Alexander one. I hate that
episode. No, not the Alexander one is awful. The Alexander one is one of the worst episodes TNG ever did.
I know.
But no, it's the one with Timothy, the scientist who's going to get
they all die at 60.
Yeah. What's and the actor's name from MASH? Well, I can never remember his name.
Oh, David Ogden.
David Ogden Stiers. Yeah, and because I just rewatched North and South on DVD, and he's in that. And that's to me, that's the only Loxana episode that I think is genuinely a good episode that she ever did. That's a really good episode.
It is a good episode.
And it actually makes me feel for her because you feel like, oh, she genuinely falls in love with this guy, and then has to reconcile herself to the fact that he comes from this planet where they kill themselves at 60. And it's like, okay, I actually have some human sympathy for her. And then she shows up on Deep Space Nine, and I'm like, oh, she's still the worst person in the world. Never mind. She's still awful. But anyway, all of that
we didn't want this to degenerate into an argument over Luoxana Troy.
All of that to say, we'll continue that after we're done recording. All of that to say, all of that to say, just because this season of Strange New Worlds was not like the perfect season that the first season was for me, doesn't mean that I feel like the show is slipping or that it's becoming a bad show. It's still a fantastic show.
It was a different season.
That's all. And I'm, once the strikes are settled, hopefully soon, and hopefully with a fair deal for the actors and the writers, because fuck the studios. Hopefully that happens soon and they're able to get things back on track and we're not waiting too long for season 3. And I'm very curious to see what the resolution is to this cliffhanger, even though, as I said earlier, I'm not crazy about cliffhangers, but if you're going to do one, this one was well done. So yeah, there you go. Good episode and good season overall.
Yeah. Then we'll you guys won't see us again for 2 years.
Exactly.
It's true. I mean, there's no way around it. Unless you're going to force me to watch Discovery and we wind up doing this.
I would not force you to do that. No, I know.
Might be fun. People already hate me.
If you wanted, listen,
fuck Discovery. What?
If you wanted to do it, I would do it in a heartbeat. I mean, because I'm going to watch it either way.
I know you're going to watch it either way.
I would totally do reviews of Discovery. I'm not going to do reviews of Lower Decks because it would just be 10 episodes of the exact same thing.
You're a glutton for punishment. You're just like, how do you think it's going to end? How do you think Discovery's going to end?
Discovery? I have no idea.
Think the ship will explode?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they'll do anything that, the show is actually it since the first season, it has lightened up a lot. It's still not like a fucking romp in the grass. Like it still gets kind of grim every once in a while, especially for a Star Trek show, but they really lightened up after season 1. I mean, but at the same time, I still think season 2 is still probably their best season.
Okay.
But I'm curious to see. The thing about Discovery that I always wonder is this the season that they finally figure out how to do a season-long story arc? Because they came the closest in season 2, and then in season 4, the most recent season, for the first half, they had it, like it was great. And then they got to the halfway point and they took a break and then came back like a month later. And it's like it fell off a cliff. It was like, what the fuck happened? And then they picked it up by the end. Like they finished pretty strong, but there was a stretch, after this when the second half started, where it was like, what is going on? It's like they completely lost this. This was so good, and now it's just nothing. It's all over the place. And then they finally got their shit together for like the last 2 episodes, and it was like, okay, they finished, they ended it okay, but Jesus, they fucking lost this thing in the middle. So they've never quite nailed it, and they've got one more try.
I think that's what it was. One of the reasons why I was just kind of like, because the seasons were so spotty.
Yeah.
And I would forget that the show was even going on. I would be like, nothing was. It wasn't maintaining my interest long enough for me to remember when the new episode would drop. And so I'd forget about it. And then you say, oh, I was watching Discovery, and I'm like, that's still going?
Oh, I didn't watch that.
And then I would sit down and try to watch it. Yeah, I'd sit down and try to watch it and go, oh, geez. And then stop watching it again. And then depend on your updates for me to figure out what was going on that show. So that's it. Strange New Worlds has 2 seasons. Hooray.
Yes. 2 excellent seasons. And whenever season 3 comes out, we'll be waiting for it. So
sure. So see you in 8 years, everybody.
See you in 2032 for season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Why does everybody look so much older? That's weird.
I don't understand. Or we'll be back next year and we'll be like, welcome to the new cartoon show, Strange New Worlds Animated, where
they've decided to transition the entire franchise into animation. For some reason.
All right. Can we say bye?
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us this year.